Welcome to Level Up Tribes. Level Up Tribes provides resources to help you attain the necessary resources to level up your mind, body, and soul and realize your full potential. It is about exploring, learning, providing you with the tools from the experts for you to create a better version of yourself. I am your host, Agnes Goodwine, and welcome, Tribes.
Hi, Agnes. How are you?
Hey, Neil. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you. Yeah, I'm
Well,
excited to be here talking to you today. So that's great.
yeah, welcome to Level Up Tribes podcast.
I'm curious about a couple of things. So where are you?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, well, it's probably warm there.
Hmm.
What's the complete saying on the board behind you, which I can only see some of it?
Yes. It says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.
Okay.
Well, again, I'm super excited to have you. I love connecting with authors and love connecting with people that talk about spirituality, consciousness. This is just the area that I love so much. And it's the reason why that I started the podcast, for us to evolve and connect and just be better humans, right? So hopefully what we talk about today will inspire and heal those that are listening. So, Neil, at the age of 57, you were depressed, anxious, and fearful, and you felt trapped, searching for the silver of hope, a reason to keep going. And then you found a higher road, and which is the name of your book that we will be talking about today. And so I am super excited that you are on a mission to just help us and guide us for those that are in a dark place, to find that peace, to find that joy, and find that purpose. Please tell us more about you. I know a little bit because I read the book. Tell us your story.
Yeah, well, thank you, Agnes. It's a pleasure to be here today. And yeah, I mean, my goal is to help people and to help change the consciousness of the world one person at a time. And I firmly believe, actually know that as more and more people do this, we will eventually create a new era of love and peace around the world. And that's my goal, is to help that happen. So a little bit about me. Born in 1960, so I'll be 62 this May. Born in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I've lived in Canada my entire life, although I've traveled the world. Second marriage. We have combined 3 kids, and I have 5 grandchildren, and they're all Texans. And the oldest one just joined the Marine Corps, graduated from high school and joined the Marine Corps. I'm a professional engineer with an MBA, and I've worked in the hydroelectric industry for over 30 years. So in 1960, I was born youngest of 6, and my father passed away when I was 5 years old. My mother had to go out and get a job right away. So she had a university degree, but she was a stay-at-home mom. So she could get a job teaching that September. So my father passed away in July, and she got a job teaching in September. But 2 weeks after my dad passed away, she started this 3-year summer program to get her teaching certificate. So she went off to do that and then went to work. My grandmother looked after me for the first year. And then after that, this is the 60s. So we walked ourselves to school, a different time. And, essentially, I grew up and, kind of finished high school and then didn't really know what I wanted to do. And after a couple of years, I figured, the best thing I'll do is I'll get an engineering degree. My uncle was an engineer, didn't have any guidance, but I thought, I'll go get an engineering degree. So I did that. So I graduated from engineering, and I worked in the corporate world. And in the 90s, I was managing projects at that time. So I managed projects for most of my career, from a few $100,000 to $100 million. And in the 90s, I thought, okay, well, I'm engaging with so many people on this work. I'd like to actually adopt a mindset which enabled me to better assimilate, understand, and take in other people's perspectives of things. So being an engineer, it's, if you can observe it, measure it, calculate it, those things are true. And people that kind of went outside that, I was kind of like, I don't know about that. And I might agree with them or disagree with them, but I wanted to get this better mindset. So I picked up some spiritual books. I picked up, books by Napoleon Hill and Wayne Dyer, and I picked up Tony Robbins and some books on positive thinking. And that decade I kind of spent trying to fundamentally change my opinions and attitudes and thoughts. And it never really worked. I was using my willpower to try and change things that I programmed in my subconscious and my unconscious mind. And that's a little bit like using honey to try and clean up a mess of honey. Eventually, in the end, your ego wins. And so I went into consulting in 2002, and life became about work. If you don't do well, if you don't please your clients, you don't get repeat work. So life became about work, work, work. You don't work, you don't get paid. Don't get paid for holidays or sick time or anything else. So I worked. And eventually what happened is I drove myself from 2002 to 2015. In 2015, I realized I was in this really deep, dark, despondent depression. And at the time I thought, okay, I need to try and do something to get out of this. No one knew I was in that state. My wife didn't know, my family, my colleagues, no one knew. We're all great actors in our environment. We can put forth whatever we want. And so, projecting kindness and, inclusivity and all those great things. But inside I was a mess. And so I picked up some newly issued spiritual books, and I read them to go through the same process I tried to do in the 90s, and some scientific books and some spiritual books. And I couldn't really, it didn't work again. It didn't stick. I couldn't make it work. I could believe what I was reading, but I couldn't fundamentally change how I was thinking. And the reason is because, as we grow from babyhood to adulthood, what we do is we adopt patterns of thinking and feeling. We program it in our subconscious mind. And those things are like concrete. They're very hard to break up and dissolve. And you actually need a process to do that. So in 2017, our house that had been on the market for a number of years finally sold. My wife got on a plane to go to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, visit family and friends. And I sat down at this little 1-bedroom rental apartment kitchen table, and I planned out and I crafted my suicide note. And I was planning to commit suicide a few months out, because I wanted to make sure my wife would be financially okay and that I could say goodbye to family and friends without them knowing what I was going to do. A week prior, some information came to me in a fortuitous way. And I call it a blueprint document. And it promised to liberate me from my thinking if I followed it. And I was looking for anything to kind of hang on. And because I had this little, although I grew up agnostic, I had this little nagging Christian doubt, so to speak, that if I committed suicide, I'd be going to a pretty bad place. And now I had read a book just prior to that about a woman who had a near-death experience. And this is a woman who, in her 40s, she developed this really aggressive cancer that over a 4-year period left her body from her waist to her head full of tumors. And her body weight went from a normal body weight to down to 75 to 90 pounds. I don't remember exactly. She couldn't lift her head on her own, and she was on oxygen 24 hours a day. She needed 24/7 care, and she fell into a coma. They rushed her to the hospital, and the admitting physicians told her husband and her family that she wouldn't make it through the night. And she was in this coma. She woke up 24 hours later, and she declared she was going to be totally fine. Within 2 weeks, they couldn't find a trace of cancer in her body. So all medically documented. They don't know why. They call it a spontaneous remission, but they couldn't find any cancer in her body. And she brought back when she was in this coma, she had this near-death experience. And what she did is she brought back certain messages. And this is all described in her book. It's a great book, a very good description about what she experienced. And some of the messages she brought back was, we come from love, we return to love, we're not judged after death. That to me, at the time, gave me permission to sit down and craft this suicide note, because I felt confident that I wouldn't be judged. And so I sat down at the table. but this other information had shown up. So I thought, okay, well, I'm okay to commit suicide, but I'm going to see if I can give this other stuff a try. And if it doesn't work, I can still commit suicide. So I studied this material, and a year later, so this would have been November 2017. A year later, I woke up and realized my depression was totally gone. I was full of love and peace and joy, and I felt totally prosperous and abundant. And 13 months after, so late December 2018, I went into 2 meditations and 2 days apart. And we can talk more about this, but when you go through these meditations, what you do is you go through different vibrational frequencies of consciousness, and you raise your vibrational frequency of consciousness. And the spiritual energy flowed into my head and filled my body, and it felt like it just enveloped me and cradled me in unconditional love. And I felt fully supported. I felt non-judged. It was so beautiful. And I didn't care what ailments my body had. I didn't care what anybody had done to me in the past. I didn't care what I had done. I just felt totally cradled and enveloped in this unconditional love, a state of unconditional love that we don't have the language to even describe. And I had 2 of these back to back, a day apart. And I just wanted to stay there forever. And to me, this is so this near-death experience by this woman, she describes that she felt the same thing when she had this near-death experience. And she too says you can't explain it because we just don't have the language to describe this. And so I knew then that what I had learned, this new knowledge I gained, this process I followed was true. It was our truth. And I wanted to just shout it from the rooftops. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to be looked at like an idiot, so I won't do that. And it took me a couple of years to figure out the best way to share this with people is to write a book. So I've written a book, and in my book, I describe or I offer for people the exact process that I went through that got me to this new state. And I can tell you from December 2018, or from when I even began this, it just gets better and better and better and more loving and more amazing and more wonderful as you do this, as you progress in this process of this spiritual awakening. And I just want everybody to experience this. So that's my story, so to speak.
So I wanted to ask you, I know that you've said that we're agnostic, but then you write this beautiful book, beautiful spiritual book, right? Coming from someone that was like not truly a believer, and the shift, right? That just happens as you read the book, and each chapter is just beautiful.
Well, thank you. Well, so a couple points. One is that, and I think we all need to do this. You can never accurately judge the inner reality of another person. Someone that is very kind and affable could be an entire mess inside. And someone that is very, kind of mean and ugly, you can never judge the innate goodness deep within them. And so, we think we can, but really what we see in our world is merely a reflection of our beliefs. And everything that you think is really truly just a belief. You have programmed your subconscious mind with a collection of beliefs associated with feelings that you reinforce over a lifetime. And they come from your parents, and they come from your own experiences, and they come from, things that you learn and people you interact with as you're growing up. And all of this mixes together to create what we think our reality is. And there's not 2 people that have the same reality. And this in that if you have 10 people observe an event, and then you get them to actually describe that event in depth, no one will have the exact same explanation of it, because it's all influenced by how they've pre-programmed their subconscious mind.
Yes.
And so my book, is really to share this blueprint document, to open you up through the same path of scientific information that I use, that to me was believable and understandable and logical and rational. And then open up your consciousness to a point where you are willing to accept this blueprint document that I share, that does this final bridge again in a very logical, rational way, based in science that we know today, that does this final bridge between spirituality and science.
Yes.
And I think that the other thing that I will mention, because you had mentioned this about especially people that are in a dark place, absolutely. But so I would love if everybody in the world read my book and made a decision for themselves.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who this is going to resonate with. It might resonate with somebody that is deeply depressed or having a bad time. It might resonate with somebody that thinks they have it all and they're very wealthy and all of that, but inside they are struggling with whatever it is that they're struggling with.
Yes.
And it might resonate with people that are very religious right now, but still have those little bits of doubt about those things in religion that seem to be a bit of a mystery. This process that I described, the 7-step process, if you follow it, you will understand the truth of our origins. You will understand what was before the Big Bang. You understand what happened, the impetus for the Big Bang, what happened at the time of the Big Bang, and how our material universe came about, how it was created, why it was created, why we're here, and what our purpose in life is.
Yes.
And when you understand this stuff, and it is so logical and it is so rational, you will be able to bridge this gap between spirituality and science in such an understanding and believable way. And you'll lift your consciousness to this point where you will feel the inflow of power, spiritual power, life force energy that will cement your understanding, your belief, your faith, and it supports you and it inspires you, and you get messages, and it helps you as you go through this process to evolve and blossom in this spiritual awakening. And, our soul comes here over many, many lifetimes to learn to have the experiences it wants to experience, the feelings that it wants to feel, and to learn the lessons that it wants to learn. Sometimes you're going to be born into varying genders, varying places of origin, varying colors of skin, varying religions, sometimes not religious. Sometimes you'll be wealthy, sometimes you'll be poor. All of these things are designed for your soul to evolve and grow in its spiritual awareness of itself. The ego is a divinely ordained process that works through the laws of the universe that you will understand when you follow this process.
Yes.
And your soul is a fragment of divine consciousness. It is equal to my soul. When I see someone today, I see a soul that's equal to my soul, and anything that they're doing that I consider to be reprehensible or not good or harmful to other people, I know is their path to the light. They are creating these experiences that they manifest into their own life to learn the lessons they need to learn. It's
Amen to that.
Yeah. So it's only through lessons of suffering will the journeying soul gain self-knowledge to retain individuality after discarding the ego.
Yeah.
And when you actually understand that we live in this duality, the ego is this electromagnet. It uses the mechanics of electromagnetism to create every event and every experience that comes into your life. Your ego has control of your life and what you think is your reality, what you believe is your reality,
Yes.
to create all of these things that come into your life. And whether it's something that you really like and enjoy, or something that you would rather not experience or don't want at all. And when you understand these mechanics and these mechanisms you use and your soul's purpose, You can make a conscious choice to either carry on living like you are or to totally transform your life.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when I talk about me these days, I don't talk about me being the ego. And someone, 10 years ago, 5 years ago would have said, me, and me is really the ego. I talk about me being my soul. My soul is my reality. Our
Yeah.
soul is our reality. Our ego is the shadow side of self to create these lessons that we need to learn.
You said a lot there. And I mean, I'm telling you, we could talk about this for like the next 3 or 4 hours, but considering time, when you said about, the reincarnation of the soul, it took me a long time learning and as I evolve and I get older and read more about spirituality and self-help books. I take what pieces resonate with me, but there's a movie, one of my favorite movies of all time is called Cloud Atlas. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's with Tom Hanks and Halle Berry. And that movie explains exactly what you just said because you see Tom Hanks as this person evolving each lifetime and coming back. His soul keeps coming back and he learns, right? And I feel like that's what we are here for. We're these soul that we're here for that experience so we can eventually evolve collectively,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Whichever lifetime it is, when your soul finally wakes up and understands what it's doing to itself, it begins this process. It begins this process to cleanse the ego, the thinking, the negative thinking, the things that are detrimental that create these experiences that come into your life that you consider to be bad and detrimental,
Mm-hmm.
and to actually come back to its true state, which its true state is unconditional love. And when you finally manage in whichever lifetime that is to actually transcend your ego, which means you understand you're living this duality, but you have let your soul gain mastery over your life, over every response, over how you view everything in your life. So your soul is here to, you are not here to please God, you are here to express God. And God is unconditional love. And so when your soul gains mastery over your ego, then you will be a complete expression of what God really is, whether you call it the Tao or Yahweh, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
Allah. And when you express unconditional love to every event and every experience that you have in your life, then when you leave that lifetime, you will step into the light and you will not need to be reincarnated again. And that is our overall goal. And this is it's an evolving process. And when you actually understand these mechanics of the ego and how they work and what your real true purpose in life is, and then you have this very concrete, rational process
Yeah.
that can take you through this cleansing and rebuilding of your consciousness, you
Mm-hmm.
can begin this process. And I can tell you that if you are willing to be persistent and dedicated with this process and this daily meditation, you
Yes.
can totally transform your life and you will step into a new era where, you just view everything differently and you're not caught up in the madness and the chaos of the world. The stuff that's going on right now, I know it's part of the process to evolve and transform the human race on this planet to avoid the self annihilation, which is where we're actually headed if we don't evolve.
Yeah. I agree with you so much. Okay, so I think you probably have like 3 books that it sounds like there's 3 books coming from Neil in the future. I see one, I see one on the ego. Do you want to share a little bit about your 7 key concepts of this, or do you want to talk about like what is consciousness? Like which way do you want to go with
Well,
this?
let's talk a little bit about consciousness. So that, the 7 steps, I'm happy to share them, but I was thinking about this is like they have to be shared at such a high level, you're not really going to understand it.
I know. That's why I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know which.
So I think the better thing to share is let's talk a little bit about consciousness and what do we know, an example of what do we know in science today that we didn't know 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
Perfect.
So I used to think that consciousness, so this is all in a higher road, by the way. And my recommended way to read a higher road is read it cover to cover, understand the process in its entirety, and then make a decision for yourself. If it resonates with you, go back and start with some of the science material or directly with step one. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. If you bought a print copy, then I ask that you please just pass that on to somebody else without colorful commentary. And again, the reason is because you can never accurately judge the inner reality of another person. It may be the biggest gift that you give them.
Oh, I love it.
So consciousness. So I used to think that consciousness was all in my brain, and everything that I thought was something that I had been exposed to, had learned, had experienced, had read about, had watched or seen, and that it was all created in my mind. Then I read these scientific books that explained to me that, what you think about affects the health of your cell. It can either promote the well-being of a cell or be detrimental to it. Mm. And this is all based in science, and I share all of this in a higher road. The other thing I read from a scientific perspective is some books on neuroplasticity, and really what those books describe in a really easy to understand way is that you can change the way your thoughts travel through the brain, your neural pathways, and you can also grow new brain cells. Mm-hmm. And so what I learned from those books was that, well, consciousness is not only in my brain, it's in my entire body. Then I read that near-death experience book, and part of her description was that when she was in that state of that coma, she felt like she was becoming part of everything in the universe, be it a rock, a plant, a tree, another person. And so what that did is that stretched my understanding of consciousness to understand that from her perspective, the way she describes it is consciousness is in everything. I now have a new understanding of consciousness, and which is beyond that. And I'll leave that as a little thing, a nugget for you to kind of learn about. And so then I got into this blueprint document that then furthered my education and new knowledge. And so, one thing that we know today in science that we didn't know 50, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, was that there's nothing solid under the sun. Everything is composed of energy particles. At a subatomic level, it's all just energy. And so we think this body is solid, and we view it as solid. And certainly if you go stand in front of a moving bus, you're going to die. You're going to get hurt or you're going to die. But we think it's solid. But in reality, there's more space in this, what we think is solid. There's more space than there is anything in there that's solid. And so, science believes that there was a big bang. They don't know of what, and they don't know why. And out of that came what we believe is the material universe, and that electromagnetism was created. And these electromagnetism, these electrical particles got together randomly, and they formed elements. And these elements randomly got together to form the first living molecule. And these living molecules randomly got together to form the first living cell. And then over billions of years, we have the life forms that we see today. And so let's talk about a cell. So when you look at a cell, the sperm fertilizes the ovum. It starts with one cell, divides into two, into four, and so on, to over a 9-month period, build the intricate workings of this body.
Yes.
And the other thing we know in science today is that every cell has the library of information for the entire body. The only difference between a liver cell and a skin cell is the work that it does. So these cells get together and they harmoniously build a liver. They never intrude on anybody else's work. They never suddenly spring into making an ear. They build and maintain this liver. And it's so the only difference between these cells is the work that they do. When you look at one cell, it's encased in this permeable membrane. So it gives it individuality and protection. And there's a nucleus, and that's likened to the brain, and that's where the library of information is. So the question becomes, when did consciousness first creep into living matter? And so you look at this one cell, it can discern the right nutrition that's going to be helpful and healthy for it. So it accepts it in through this permeable membrane. And then it can discern when there's toxic waste buildup from utilizing the nutrition in that stuff that it's taken in. And it ejects that toxic waste out of the membrane, out of this permeable membrane, because it knows that if it builds up with this toxic waste, it's going to be harmful to it. So that's the first act of consciousness that I think science could deign to believe that that is an act of consciousness. It's purposeful. So if there's consciousness in a living cell, why wouldn't there be consciousness in living molecules that got together to form a cell?
Right.
And if there's consciousness in the living molecules, why wouldn't there be consciousness in the elements that combine to form the first living molecule?
Right.
And if there's consciousness in the elements, why wouldn't there be consciousness in the electrical particles that fuse to form the elements? When you look at how the universe is, it is so ordered and it is so orderly that we know there has to be some higher power that has created this. Nothing's random. And so when you understand what was before the Big Bang, the impetus for the Big Bang, what happened at the time of the Big Bang, and how this material universe has come about, you will understand that this life force energy comes from our source. This life force energy is not random, it is purposeful, and it has created all of these things over billions of years through an evolutionary process. And when you understand all of this, and then the mechanics of the universe, how we use the laws of the universe, electromagnetism, to create every event and every experience that comes into our life, you can make this consciousness choice. So we think with electrical impulses in our brain, and we feel with magnetic impulses in our nervous system. The magnetic impulses center and bond the electrical impulses to create a blueprint of a future event or experience that we manifest into our life. You are the creator of everything that comes into your life, whether you like it or you don't like it. And when you understand these things, you can start to make this change and this to cleanse yourself of these things that draw these negative events and experiences into your life and harm other people. And you just begin to get into this state of expressing unconditional love to everything. You will understand when your ego's in control. You'll understand this duality that we live in, and that really what you want to do is you want to get your soul, you want to break down these bonds that you have, kind of bound down your soul from babyhood to adulthood. That you created with your ego. You want to get rid of those so that you let your soul gain mastery over your life.
Yes.
And when that happens, you express unconditional love to everything and everyone. And you work on healing yourself and you work on healing others.
Yes. And the thing is, too, Neil, that your book provides that because it's a journal. So you really are not going to find out your individual wounds and what's keeping you back until you read the book and do the exercises. And from that, it will surface whatever ego has been, help me with words.
Created into your life.
Created into your life. It will surface, right? Because sometimes, we are, I shouldn't generalize, but sometimes we might react to something and don't even know why that bothered us or if why that made us sad. But if we go back and do the work and really, and using your book and the tools, then you can say, oh my God, that's what that is, and kind of work through that and work through the ego. I wanted to talk a little bit about the ego. I know the ego gets a bad rap. Is there anything good about the ego? I
So,
mean,
so before I answer that question,
yes.
let me just mention this is that, you know, the first thing that I had to learn, and it was in some of these science books that I learned this, is that really, truly, everything that I think is right or wrong, good or bad, true or false, is really just a belief. And I can tell you as an engineer and someone who grew up, and I suspect other people are like this. No, I know that person has a different opinion and they believe that to be true, but nah, they're wrong. I'm right. and and really what you think as right or wrong, good or bad, true or false is really fundamentally just a belief. And you've programmed yourself with these beliefs. So when you react to things from this subconscious mechanism, this programming, it's consistent with your beliefs, but it is really just a belief. And when you understand how and why the universe was really made, you can then go through this process of cleansing yourself of these false negative beliefs and coming back to your reality. Yeah, so let's talk about the ego. What's good about the ego? The ego is so the ego is not to be condemned or judged. It is a divinely ordained tool to create individuality out of the wholeness of the divine. And through many lifetimes, you come here to shape and hone and hew your individual personality. And you are an individualized expression of unconditional love. Your soul is an individualized expression of unconditional love. And you have a unique personality that you are honing and shaping till you get through this process of transcending the ego. And then when you go back to the divine, you bring this richness back to the divine in this wholeness, but you will not lose the individuality of your personality. It's just that you will be expressing your unique aspect of unconditional love, and bring that back to the wholeness of the divine. And so your ego is divinely ordained to protect you. It's that instinctual thing that says danger down this alley, don't go there. Yeah. It's and it is it has a few processes, but it is to protect you, it's to bring you food and ensure your survival. And so there's all kinds of good things about the ego, but when it is left to run rampant and be selfish and do things that harm others while trying to get things for itself, then what it's doing is it is contrary to unconditional love. And so if there was no one else in the world and you were the only one here, you could do whatever you want.
Yes.
You would, because you're not harming anybody else. But because we live in this environment with a lot of people, of course, when just one other person, if you are doing things that are selfishly motivated and negative, violent, denigrating, slanderous, like there's a list of things that you need to cleanse, and you'll be given this very specific process to do this. You are harming somebody else, but in reality, it's creating a rebound form that's going to harm you, because you have you have free will, and you have the power to use that free will with the mechanics of the universe that center and bond these electrical impulses. The electrical impulse is a consciousness plan. It is a will and a consciousness plan. And the magnetic portion of electromagnetism centers and bonds this into a cohesive whole, which creates this blueprint. And you create this blueprint when you reinforce it over time with repetitive thinking and feeling, and you will get a rebound form. of a like experience. So these are the things that draw to you, these lessons that you need to learn, these feelings that you need to experience. And so, if you take the frame of reference off of one lifetime and you understand this duality, you won't get caught up in the why do bad things happen to people. You will understand it is just this process that they're going through as their soul is evolving. And you will be able to then express unconditional love no matter what they do. You will be able to express unconditional love to them, to help them heal themselves, to help their souls wake up to begin this process. And that is, that's your goal. You might not want to befriend them and buddy with them, but you're not going to judge them. Because when you judge another, you will be judged in a like manner. And that rebound form you have created for yourself. There's no one to blame. Anything that comes into your life is of your own making. So this is a full accountability conversation. You are fully accountable for everything that comes into your life. And when you understand these mechanics, you can then go through this process to decide whether you want to carry on the way you are or make these changes.
Good answer. Very deep. Understand.
Nothing is like, a one-liner.
I know. I like it. I have a few more questions before I let you go. I can talk to you all day about this, but you talk about meditation a lot. And so I wanted you to touch on that and how meditation can help us transform to be at that level that you just explained.
So meditation is key. And so in the 90s, I picked up different meditation techniques. There's CDs with 100 different ways to meditate. And there's all these good reasons for meditating: lower blood pressure, less stress, less anxiety, all that kind of stuff. All of those are good. And I tried meditation for years, on and off, not consistent with it. And what I found through learning this new knowledge and this new information, which if you follow the 7 steps, you'll understand this, is the real purpose of meditation. The true purpose of meditation is for you to go into the silence and stillness of the mind so that you can connect back with the divine, with our source, with our creator. And there will be people I know that immediately say, you can't stop your thoughts in your mind. And I can tell you, no, you can. And if I can do it, you can do it. You just need to understand the process, and then you need to practice. So whether you start with 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day and build up to whatever you're comfortable with, consistency is the most important thing. And you have to find a time a day when it works best for you. So what I have found for me, and I meditate, this is a non-negotiable thing for me. I meditate daily for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And, when you meditate, you don't have to get into some kind of weird stressful pose. You don't have to do, I'm not familiar with all the names of the yoga poses, but you don't have to sit in a yoga pose to meditate. What you need to do is you need to get in a state where your body is totally relaxed. You are not supporting anything with your muscles. So what I do is I use a recliner, and I get into a recliner position. So I get up in the morning. I get up early in the morning. So sometime between 4:30 and 5:30, I get up. I have some water, go to the washroom, get comfortable, make a coffee, bring a coffee, and I listen to some material for 15 to 20 minutes before I start my meditation. And that's this blueprint document. I keep going over this blueprint document because stuff that I read or listened to, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, my understanding has deepened and evolved. So what I listen to today is entirely, my understanding of it is different than I took from it a year ago. It just gets better and better. Anyway, so I listen to a little bit of that and I sip my coffee. Then I put in foam earplugs because I don't want to hear anybody or anything. And I get in this relaxed state. And then I say this one prayer. It's the only prayer you're going to learn and you're going to use at the beginning of your meditation. And then I just go through this process to stop my mind from thinking. And what that does is it enables me to connect with our source. So your source was before the Big Bang. Your source is in silence and stillness. And it is so spiritually refined and such a high vibrational frequency that it cannot enter into you to let itself be known to you until you begin this process to raise your human consciousness vibration. This process, what it does is as you're cleansing and you're cleaning and you're rebuilding, you are slowly building new brain cells at the top of the brain underneath the skull. And over time, that those size of brain cells, that area of brain cell development develops physically. And so at the end of 7 months, or in the 7 month period, I felt this little tingling at the top of my head, and it was about the size of a dime. I didn't know what it was. It just felt kind of weird.
Crown chakra, we call it.
Yep. So that grew to about the size of my fist at about the 9 month mark. And then I knew what it was, and the spiritual energy was flowing into me. Today, you could put a bowl over my head that goes to the bottom of my ears, and that's how big that opening is.
Oh,
And I
wow.
have constant and mutual reciprocation of communication with the source of our being. And I can just go into silence and stillness. And as I'm talking to you right now, I can feel the inflow of spiritual energy. So when you learn this process, you'll go through the same thing. And so you learn how to meditate. You can start with whatever you want. And like I said, I kind of meditate. I meditate 90 minutes to an hour, 2 hours every day, and it's non-negotiable. This is the most peaceful, joyful, pleasant time of any part of any day. But I am at a point now where I can go into this state anywhere. But I'm never giving up on meditation. Meditation is the place where you continue this cleansing, this building, this gaining of increased spiritual knowledge and connection back with source. And you get help. But I can tell you that when you go through this process, and whether you're looking for help from Jesus or you're looking for help from Mother Mary or anybody else that will assist you, in addition to your target is the universal. Your target is what people call God. But all these other souls are there to help you, but they can't help you unless you can connect with them and ask specifically for help. And then they will rush to help you. But they can't enter into you until you invite them.
Wow.
And so you go through this process, you'll go through this learning, you'll understand this, and you have your source of being radiates unconditional love to you unstintingly 24 hours a day, but you don't feel it because your human consciousness is at such a low vibrational frequency. Go through this process and you'll feel it all the time. And you'll get inspired messages, you'll get direction, you'll get clarity about what you should be working on. If you ego flares up in the moment of a conversation, you can stop, go into that silence and stillness, and you will get support to be able to gain mastery over that ego response and have an appropriate response in that moment. It is, I tell you, it is the most beautiful, wonderful, amazing process. And this is what our goal is. Everybody's goal is to come back to this. And what I want to do is give people the information and the process, very concrete process, to enable them to do it sooner rather than later.
Yes. Well, thank you for writing such a beautiful book. It's called The Higher Road, Cleanse Your Consciousness to Transcend the Ego and Ascend Spiritually. 7 steps process to inner peace, joy, love, abundance, and prosperity. I love it. I want to manifest that car like you did a few years ago.
Well, and that's an example I use in the book, right? In 2011,
Yes.
I did something every day that manifested this $60,000 hardtop Lexus convertible into my life in a year. But later in the book, I described the actual mechanics of the universe that I was employing that I didn't know I was doing. And that's what actually created that into my life. But we do this with everything that we like or we don't like.
Yes. Is there anything else you would like to add or discuss that perhaps we didn't touch on today?
I think the biggest thing is that no matter where you are in life, ill or healthy, happy, depressed, living in a mansion or living on the street, if you are open and you're willing to understand and learn the process and gain this new knowledge, you can totally transform your life. And then you can become eventually this beacon of light for others to be curious about. And when you do that, then they will ask you. And, it's not my place or your place to push your beliefs onto other people's. But if people are willing to listen, please share with them. And if they're not, then just hold your peace. It's not their time yet, and that's okay. It's just part of the process.
So what's next for you?
Figuring out a way that I can best help people go through this process,
Yeah.
and work on. I've been doing podcasts, so I've done about 60 podcasts in a short little while. I need to actually do some posting. I'm not a social media, kind of buff,
Yeah.
but I think it'd be helpful to post some things on social media. And
Okay. Talking about
and
social media, what's your social media so people can reach out to you and follow you?
oh, if they go to my website, so the website is dneilelliott.com, and the easy way to get there is ahigherroad.com. That'll point you to my author website, and all of my social media is on there. And the book is available globally, wherever books are sold. And certainly you can get it in Kindle, Apple, Nook, or Kobo, and Amazon. If you want to get a print copy, you can order it via your bookstore, or, Amazon delivers them pretty quickly.
It's been an honor just talking to you. You're very wise. I love this conversation about spirituality and consciousness. And I believe that you're just beginning. Wait to see. I can't wait to see the other books.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I am visualizing one more book here, but we do it one step at a time. 4 years ago, I would have never thought I would have written the first book. So,
And I also wanted to give a big shout out to your wife. She sounds absolutely lovely.
my wife is absolutely lovely, and she will tell you I'm still a work in progress. So everybody know, everybody know that I'm not perfect. There's a work in progress. I still have things that I'm working on. So
We all do. We all do. Well, thank you so
sure.
much. It's been a pleasure. I always love having my Canadians on the show. You're like my third, and it's always fun.
Well, thank you so much, Agnes. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope that we can reach somebody that is interested, that would like to begin this spiritual awakening.
Thank you for listening. Please visit the website at www.leveluptribes.com, and please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. Catch you all next time, my beloved tribes.